so that people can, you don't have to run to the emergency room or the doctor every time there's an issue. We're not taught to give grace. We're taught to have people live by perfection. And nobody can live into that. And I'm just as guilty about it as I think as everybody else. Like I can't say that I'm any better, right? Fall into that trap. Tatenda, what has been your experience? What showed up for you in your life that made you want to be a support to people in this way, if I may ask?
Thank you, Jody. I think just throughout the years, I've kind of dealt with personal issues that are not much different from the personal issues that a lot of us, have dealt with. Loss in the family, conflict leading up to conflict resolution, just a lot of those issues. And even when I started working out my first job out of college, staff nurse,
Can you get closer to the microphone, or I'm having a struggle hearing?
Is this better?
Not so much. Try one more time.
How about now? Is this better?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I was saying, in my first job as a staff nurse, I don't know, people have always said like, oh, you have a very calm way of handling things even when you're under a lot of pressure. I don't understand how. And so I decided, well, if this is something that a lot of people recognize in the way that they do, what can I do with this? What can I do with just being able to handle personal stresses, personal family issues that come up, and how can I impart that to people that I work with? And so, contrary to popular belief, you don't have to work in mental health to work with mental health. Everywhere you go, essentially, you're going to run into mental health. And
Thank you.
Yep. And so
because I work with people, I my big focus is emotional well-being, so I get it. Yeah.
So that's kind of how I ended up deciding to take the track that I did and go into mental health. And speaking more recent, everybody has been able to sort of get by, right? Because I kind of like to use the analogy of a natural disaster, like a hurricane or tornado, something that comes through, causes a lot of stress, but then goes away. It stops. People experience it. People have a chance to heal afterwards. People have a chance to recover. If you look at the last 2 years, it kind of shocks me to say 2 years because that's how long we've been dealing with the COVID pandemic, to name one thing, but like just a lot of stresses that everybody has felt across the board. You quickly recognize that people really haven't had a chance to sort of like be able to say, oh, okay, it's done. We can move on. We can heal. We can go back to being where we were prior to this. And so what ends up happening is a lot of stresses start showing up in everyday life in ways that they haven't before. My wife works in
that last part? We lost that last because I think it's important for people to hear you.
Oh, I was saying with the pandemic having gone on for almost 2 years now, stresses start to show up and manifest themselves in people's everyday lives, right?
Yeah.
So my wife works at a bank, and she says more than ever within the past 2 years, she's noticed people, what the general public would term freaking out, right?
Freaking out, right?
Yes. Yep, because something hasn't worked out. They don't feel like they have access to the things that they need, or it's just stresses that have accumulated over time that they compound and express themselves in places that normally people wouldn't do a thing like that in a bank or a grocery store. But all bets are off, so to speak, right? And sometimes when
let me just say that she works at a bank, right? And I worked in banking for almost 30 years, various parts, either in operations, frontline, whatever. And marketing. This is the first time in the history of the world where you're allowed to walk into a bank with a mask on. Just like let that
on itself.
Yep.
And if there's any way, can we adjust your screen so people can see your handsome face? Like so we can there you go. Thank you.
Yeah.
So imagine like that alone is having people be kind of put off. And Vieta saying she worked in a bank for 10 years. Good point about masks, right? Here's Vieta. So
yeah.
She says, I worked in a bank for 10 years. Good point. Yeah. Since when are you allowed to walk into a bank with a mask? Your poor wife. I'm just saying, I was trained. How do you address somebody as soon as they walk in the door so they know that you saw them, okay? make eye contact. So you're not, so they know that if they are intending to rob the bank, right?
Yeah.
They've already been identified by the person who greeted you,
Yep.
which means there's a high likelihood that they'll be caught. So now that fear is gone from the person who wants to rob the bank, right? And they all have masks. Like crap.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
And so if we could sit around and talk about it and find the humor, find the levity, right? Wouldn't that make it a little less stressful? Just saying.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. No, you're right on the money. And I think that's part of the coping, that's come with all of this. Because 2 years in, if you can't laugh about some of this stuff, you're going to be miserable, right? It's just going to be something that generally doesn't have an end in sight. I know my really good friends, they're older, and they have been looking forward to traveling in retirement. Like this was what that was going to be their self-care. We want to travel in retirement. We want to see the world. We want to explore. And that's not an option, right? Instead, now they're having to stay safer because, again, being that they're older, they're said to be at more risk, and so they've decided to take the cautious approach and just stay home. But what does that do to their quality of life? They're not able to see their grandkids as much as they'd like to. They're not able to see their kids as much as they'd like to. But on the bright side, they're taking up gardening because that's something you can do, 3 months out of the year in Minnesota, but that's something you can do nonetheless.
Well, and let's talk about that. So, people can look at, and we all have, what the can'ts, what can't we do? But it has been a global reset. It has been an opportunity for people to stop, think, pause, and what do I want to do with my life? And is it, am I living by my highest values, right? Am I living by my highest values and achieving the things that I want to achieve? And Vieta has, so she's also one of our talks. She says, "Can you raise your volume?"
Absolutely.
Yeah, awesome. And so, and Dustin, so, can you share what got you into this field? I think I have an idea, but, I'll let you tell a story.
Well, yeah, I mean, multiple factors. I did have a very rough childhood, growing up, all of the above, abuse, trauma, poverty, all those things, and I think I ran from it for a long time. And then, the universe has a way of putting us right back to try to, cycle through and make a positive difference from the experiences we've had. And to just kind of reiterate what Tatenda was saying, that's why we came together with behavior-based and started doing these workshops to help people not be afraid. Like, we're trying to bring a positive spin to this, increased anxiety that COVID and just the world in general has. It seems to be escalating, but we don't have to make that a bad thing. This can give us an opportunity to connect with each other, to learn how to support each other better on both a micro and a macro level. I think one thing about COVID is you can't run from your spouse and your kids anymore. You know what I mean? I mean, like, it really, those conversations about, okay, I'm going to have to prioritize my family over my work because they're not going to allow me to go to work because my family has, symptoms or something. And there's a lot of hard things that come from that, but it can be a game changer. And that's really why, working in mental health and springing off, bringing hope to people. Growing up, I didn't have a whole lot of support and hope, and just to have that opportunity to bring hope to people. And now working with Tatenda and with his skill set as a nurse practitioner and his experience and, mine as I am, one of my jobs, I work in child and adolescent psychiatry, but I also am what they call a behavioral emergency response team nurse. So I support people on the medical floors that are having mental health crises on the medical floors, because most nurses are not really trained. They're amazing at the medical portion, but when it comes to mental health crisis, whether that be patient, family, other coworkers, there's no one to provide that support. And, that kind of like really, Tatenda and I have just, we're game changers. We want to make this world a better place. So we kind of put our minds together. And Rashida played a big part. She was like, yo, you got to get Tatenda involved in this because, we're a good team, and he has amazing ideas, and where I'm kind of all over the place, like, let's do it. Let's get here. Tatenda kind of like grounds me. And I think that what we provide for the, nursing homes, schools, universities, and like healthcare facilities, and even businesses, like the workshops that we're providing, I think are really, really making a difference and giving people the confidence to support each other.
That's awesome. It's interesting. I'm going to share a couple ways in which I've done it, and then I want to hear what you have done. So I'm really big on self-care, so that people you don't have to run to the emergency room or the doctor every time there's an issue. And so the easy way, is the breath. The second way, easy way, meditation. Although the first time I meditated, I fell asleep and started snoring. So, that was like, with people, it was very comical.